What's going on, world? Thank you for watching another episode of Insightful Principles. In today's content, I really want to talk about the growth of Black-owned businesses and really highlighting the power of ownership, while also talking about some of the challenges that Black entrepreneurs go through, whether it's limited access to capital, discriminatory lending practices, and also other systematic barriers that we experience within the financial system. And I think with the theme of Black History Month, it's very important to take this time to be able to reflect on our own Black history, to be able to highlight some of the improvements that we're seeing with Black-owned businesses, but also talking about the challenges and then creating those solutions of how we can be able to overcome those barriers. So I'm going to discuss all of that in today's episode. If you could please do me a huge favor, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. And don't forget to hit that notification bell below so you can be notified every week when I drop content. When it comes to the current state of what we're seeing with Black-owned businesses throughout America, according to the Census Bureau, there's about 3.12 million Black-owned businesses in America, and Black-owned businesses employ approximately about 920,000 people with a total annual payroll of 23.9 billion. So that kind of just gives you an idea of where we stand right now, and it's definitely been some growth when you look at within the last 10 years or so. We definitely have been seeing a lot more advancements with entrepreneurs within the tech space, within healthcare, within financial services. So I definitely think we'll continue to see more and more businesses to be able to evolve over time. But one thing that I read that I thought was pretty shocking is that blacks make up about 13% of the population, but only 2.4% of all U.S. businesses are Black-owned. So that just goes to show, we're already at there's a discrepancy when we talk about the Black population in America. Of course, we look at other ethnicities like Caucasians. They tend to be the ones that are the most populated within our economy. But when you think about our ownership that we have, it's only about 2.4% of all U.S. businesses. So that just goes to show that, there is a gap when we talk about ownership and just the racial makeup. When we think about the percentage that we have with all U.S. businesses. And, another thing that is good to see that we have made improvements in is that more than 4 in 10 Black-owned businesses are in healthcare, social assistance, or professional, scientific, and technical service industry. And it's about 41.4% of Black-owned businesses are in one of these two industries. And healthcare and social assistance tends to hold a weight of about 27.5% when it comes to Black entrepreneurship. And when you think about healthcare and social assistance, those are things like you have, physicians, dentists, child care day services. You may have social workers. And then for the professional, scientific, and technical service industries, those are more accountants, tax preparers, lawyers, advertising, and consulting services. And this chart really just shows the top industries for Black businesses. So like I mentioned with the healthcare and the social assistance, you can see that it's about 38,819 Black-owned businesses within America. And then if you look down past that, professional, scientific, and technical services, it's about 19,575 Black-owned businesses, and the percentage comes out to about 13.9%. And then you can kind of see here some of the differences with construction as well as transportation and warehousing. Now, according to the Bureau of Labor of Statistics, the healthcare industry is projected to grow by 13% between 2021 and 2031. So that's why I think there is a lot more presence with Black entrepreneurship within the healthcare field, because I think it is a growing and an in-demand industry. And also, I think when it comes to the professional, the scientific, and the technical industry service positions, uh, these are attractive because the cost of capital is not as high when you think of someone that maybe is trying to start a warehousing or a construction business. Like you kind of seen that chart, those tend to have not as high as a weight of presence of black entrepreneurship in those particular sectors. I think people want to be able to start businesses where the startup capital isn't as high and they can really get a jump start to being able to grow and start a business. But some other growth trends that I'm seeing when it comes to black entrepreneurship is Atlanta actually has the highest rate of black owned businesses throughout all of the US. And this chart kind of just gives you the full rankings of some of the top cities and states that have a presence when it comes to black owned businesses. So I mentioned Atlanta, Georgia. They have about 7.4% percentage of black owned businesses. Then you have Washington, D.C., which, a lot of HBCUs are in Atlanta and in Washington, D.C. You have Howard in Washington, D.C., and then you have Clark, Atlanta, that's in Atlanta, Georgia. So I think, that's probably why you're seeing, more of a presence with black entrepreneurship in those areas. But as you can kind of keep looking down the list, Virginia Beach, of course, Memphis, Tennessee, and there are even some spots in Florida like Tallahassee, Miami, and Orlando. So it definitely goes to show that a lot of the prevalent roles that we're seeing with black-owned businesses are being more within the southern areas, which that isn't a surprise when you think about just our history as black people. But it is good to see just the growth and also the states that have been doing well when it comes to having that presence with black entrepreneurship. So I talked through some of the growth trends that we're seeing with black-owned businesses in America. But we also have a lot of challenges, and there are some barriers that black entrepreneurs go through when it comes to being able to expand and grow their business. And one of those issues is really funding. And black business owners, they tend to receive less business financing and usually at higher rates. So there is a racial funding gap. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, I talked about how we have about a 13 or 14% of population here in America, but we only own about 2.4% of all U.S. businesses. And when you look at our counterparts, when you look at Caucasians, they actually are able to get 80.2% of the funding that they request at a bank, but only blacks typically get about 66.4%. So that kind of shows the gap. And as you can kind of see here, when it shows the racial makeup of U.S. business owners, you can see here for when you look at white-owned businesses, they have about 82.7% of all businesses, here in the U.S. So that just kind of shows you that racial funding gap. What are the solutions? What are some things that we can do collectively to be able to close this funding gap and also being able to have access to more capital? And I think the very first thing is leveraging alternative financing sources. So what I mean by that, you have things such as crowdfunding, peer-to-peer lending, or even being a part of a community development financial institution or reaching out to one of these institutions where there typically are banks or credit unions that provide financial services to underdeserved communities. And you also have crowdfunding platforms such as Kickstarter. There also is another organization called Indiegogo, which is INDIEGOGO, that help businesses be able to raise funds from a large number of individual investors. And then also when it comes to the peer-to-peer lending platforms, you have organizations like the Lending Club and Prosper that allow you to borrow money from individuals instead of banks. And then lastly, like I mentioned, with the community development financial institutions, they really provide capital and technical assistance to communities that don't have as many resources, including black-owned businesses. But I think the second thing that we have to do is we have to build relationships with financial institutions and investors. The only way that we're going to be able to get over the discrimination is we have to find ways to partner, whether that's maybe looking at ways to collaborate with our white counterparts, or collaborating with other black entrepreneurs that that are seeking funding, or other black investors that are well established that may have a track record of funding that they provided to other aspiring black entrepreneurs. I think that this could also come from being able to network and attend events where you can find potential lenders and investors. I think, I'm a big proponent of going to conferences, and whatever your particular field of interest in, or whatever your industry of your business, you can go to conferences to learn and meet other people. You have platforms like Meetup, where it allows you to find different categories that you're passionate about, whether it's real estate, finance, it could be marketing, it could be anything that you have an interest in. And then you have people that you can meet up with, that you can be able to have that dialogue and be able to get the insight that you need to be able to get the guidance to be able to connect with these different financial institutions and investors. I think the third thing is we have to invest. There needs to be more advancements and more equity investments into business education and mentorship programs. And I think we are starting to see more and more. There's a lot of banks that are coming out. I know with my bank personally, PNC, with my accounts that I have with them, they actually provide webinars where they educate us on the different resources that we have available when it comes to funding and being able to grow my business. So I definitely think, looking into your banks, seeing what type of business education programs they have. I think that there has to be more education within the community. So seeing more opportunities within high schools, more education around STEM programs for blacks, and being able to help with the startup costs for someone that may want to start a tech business or engineering, a mathematic type of company. And I definitely think investing in these business education and mentorship programs, whether it's through schools, whether it's through our banking system, offering these programs to their members, this can really be able to allow people to get the knowledge and the skill sets that they need to be able to build a successful business, and being able to also access capital. And I think also, looking into your university, so especially with HBCUs, they have tons of different resources when it comes to black-owned businesses, and looking at the resources that you can need to be able to excel at whatever field that you want to be able to start a business in. And then lastly, I think it really comes down to advocating for policy changes. So, I mentioned how we have that racial funding gap when it comes to, being able to get loans within the banking system. I think that we have to be able to speak up more, starting to get more in the rooms, whether it's with these banks, whether it's with these community organizations, or with our, universities, our schooling system, and really being able to encourage more promotion for a more equitable and an inclusive business environment for black entrepreneurs. And I think that we could advocate for changes in lending and investment practices. We could also promote the development for specialized financing programs for black-owned businesses, and we also can support initiatives within our communities that promote diversity and inclusion within the black ecosystem. So, all in all, I think it really just comes down to us being able to really leverage those alternative financing sources, build those relationships with financial institutions and investors, investing in business education and mentorship programs, and lastly, being able to advocate for policy changes. I think if we're able to do a mix of all of these things, We will continue to see the growth of black-owned businesses within the future, and I think that it can allow us to be able to overcome that barrier when it comes to limited access to capital and really being able to contribute to our communities and the prosperity of evolving our communities as well. But I thank you all so much for watching this episode. That wraps it up for this one. But as always, if you could continue to please like, subscribe, and share this video. Don't forget to hit that notification bell below so you can be notified every week when I drop content. And I thank you all for watching, and take care.